Good evening, everybody. It's Dr. Tom Orant, and welcome to another GEMS Insider Circle webinar. This evening, we are very fortunate to have Dr. Brady Frank. How are you tonight?
Good. How are you doing, Tom? It's great to be here.
I am fine. Thanks for asking, and thanks for coming with us. Dr. Frank is a sought-after speaker and continuing education trainer. He's addressed thousands of dentists at seminars throughout the country. Dr. Frank's implant efficiency training at the Implant Efficiency Institute has been called the best in the industry. After completing the training, the average dental practice increased by 26% in the first year. Dr. Frank's unique 12-module system allows general dentists to become completely comfortable and confident in providing simplified, efficient, lifetime implant solutions to patients. Dr. Frank is uniquely qualified as an implant trainer in that he has placed thousands of implants in his home practices and has contributed several inventions to the field of implant dentistry. And I'm going to break out of mold here, and just my point of view here is that he is a teacher, he's an instructor, he's a clinician, and he's an entrepreneur and an inventor and an amazing human being. Some of the things that he has contributed to what general dentists are now using in their practices daily are astounding. You'll see some of it tonight and how easy it is. Graduates of Dr. Frank's 2-day mini residency become well-versed in no-drill implants, the 5-minute implant, abutment and crown procedures, the top 5 flapless, no-suture, minimally invasive implant techniques. Dr. Frank is founder of the Implant Efficiency Institute and a member of the International Congress of Oral Implantology. With that, Brady, take it away.
All right, sounds wonderful, Tom. I'm really excited about the hour we've got. And for those of you that have questions as we're going, and I'm sure you will, feel free to put those in the Questions for Staff dialog box. And we will hit those for at least a good half hour afterwards. And so I'm just going to start out with my history so you can kind of get a feel for my past, and that'll probably help segue into what we're going to talk about tonight. And so the first panoramic you see up here were 3 implants just recently placed by someone that took one of my 2-day courses. And he was just about a year and a half out of school. And of course, on the upper right, it would have been nice to preserve the virgin number 4. And lower right, we had a virgin tooth and one with an occlusal amalgam. And then the upper left, of course, we couldn't do any work up there except for implant work. No option for a bridge there. This gentleman, a year and a half out of school, did this just within weeks after the course. Did the 5-minute implant abutment and crown procedure. He placed the implants, did the crowns, and so that's just something I just wanted to show you right off the bat. And so that's the type of stuff we're going to talk about tonight. So before we get into the good clinical meat of tonight's call, I'll just go over my history. I first developed my love for implants in the late 90s. I did a research project on the immediate placement of implants. Studied a lot of Brannemark stuff, and this was kind of before immediates were real popular. Most of the articles that I read at the time were studying immediate placement in beagles, poor beagles. They didn't restore the implants, so they just got implants without the restorations. But nevertheless, they found in these beagle studies that implants placed directly into tooth sockets without bone grafting or a membrane had the same high 90, which is about 98.3% success rate as conventionally placed implants. That's when I got really excited. At that time in 1999, I was just a junior in dental school. And segueing into the next point there, I actually interviewed 72 dentists about what their ideal transition strategy would be and if they placed implants or not. Well, 32 of the 72 dentists wanted to sell me their practice as a junior in dental school. Obviously, I couldn't buy 12 practices as a junior, or excuse me, 32 practices as a junior, but I did kind of develop relationships with a couple of the dentists and ended up closing on one practice the day I graduated, another 6 months later, and then ended up buying 7 practices the first 5 years out of school, which taught me a lot about transitions and acquisitions. But through all that, I absolutely loved implant dentistry, and so I had about 28 associates over time, and now I just do mainly implant teaching. I do have a practice in Oregon. Adding a partner next week, but I only have one practice now. I've sold my other practices, and so love what I'm doing now. And so I got into going to denturist locations during a period of time for about 3 years. And what I did was I brought mobile implant equipment into places that just did dentures. So they'd schedule all their extractions for immediates and all their implants on one day. And that's when I went from doing 20 or 30 implants a month to doing, well over 100 implants a month. Some days I'd even have about 28 to 30 implants with 109 or 112 extractions. So those were really productive days, but more importantly, days that I really was able to hone my techniques. And we're going to be learning the top techniques that I utilized during that time. After that point, I did a lot of one-on-one mentoring around the country where I would actually fly to a dentist's practice and they'd place their first full day of implants. I would be with them over the shoulder. I'd provide all the inventory and did that for years. But now I've got a family and 3 growing boys, and I don't do as much travel as I used to. So now folks come here, and we do a class or 2 every month with a max of 18 dentists, and that's where I do my implant teaching now. So during that time, I realized I was spending well over $250,000 a year on just implants. So I decided to start an implant manufacturing company. Most of the big companies actually outsource their manufacturing anyway. And so I developed relationships with those engineers and folks that owned the manufacturing companies for implants. And so started doing that just so I could supply my own implants, and then I started allowing students to buy them as well. So the implants that I use are basically manufactured in the same manufacturing facilities as the top-tier companies, except not at top-tier prices because I don't have a huge sales force out there. It's direct purchasing. And so anyway, I don't need to get into that, but that's been fun. And so let's cruise on into the meat of what we're going to be talking about tonight. This is a patient I saw yesterday at about 2 o'clock. Patient came in and complaining that really was painful on biting on this bridge up here. Well, it turns out that number 2 was split, vertical root fracture. And so with implants, you can do a lot of neat things that you can't when you're just using regular dentistry to solve problems. So what we did was we took the bridge off, extracted the tooth, placed 2 implants with minimally invasive techniques, and we actually took the crown off of number 5, and the patient knew that there was a possibility of doing implants. And so what was neat was the patient was already numb, so we were able to complete in her 1-hour appointment. Instead of doing a root canal on number 3 and a 3-unit bridge, she elected to just place 2 implants, do a 3-unit bridge, and a crown here. And so that was just add-on dentistry, and here's our final radiograph. You can see here's where number 3 was. So we're able to utilize the bone on each side of where that tooth was. And we used a 5-minute implant, abutment, and crown technique in this particular case. These are called rapid implants. You can see the aggressive threading, which is wonderful for maxillary bone. You can see we've got a temporary on number 5 here. And so we actually placed these implants, then took the tooth out, then prepped number 2 and number 4 for a bridge. And we didn't take the final impression yet. We got it all ready for the final, but I'm just going to wait for that tooth socket to heal. So as it says below, this was in the same 1-hour appointment, and that was about $12,000 in production. And I actually gave the patient a little discount because it did not take long. And so with no other procedure in dentistry can we provide excellent service to patients, solve a variety of problems, but also have $10,000 hourly productions, which really does wonderful things to your monthly reports, and it drives the overhead down. So I'd like to back up just 1 second and talk about phasing out seminars. After doing all those transitions, I ended up speaking around the country to groups of dentists between 55 and 75 years of age on the 3 top transition strategies. And what I found time and time again, whether I was in Dallas, whether I was in Phoenix, whether I was out in California, was that the practices that placed implants, namely the practices that placed implants with the techniques that we're going to go over, had overheads that were between 33 and 55%. I thought that was astounding, but I'll tell you what, when you do a couple of these procedures that are added into your busy week, it really drives the production up, drives the overhead lower, and the cool thing is you're able to do more for patients from a discount perspective. And you know, I know a lot of you on the call probably do some free dentistry. That's what I like a lot about this. When you've got large chunks of production from efficient implants coming in, you're able to give a lot of free dentistry away that you wouldn't normally be able to do. That's one of the most fun things that I do as a dentist. So according to the ADA, guess what? Implants are on the rise. So cosmetic dentistry is unfortunately taking big hits, but I'll tell you what, $7.9 billion in implant dentistry is expected by 2015. That's a rise of 13% a year through 2015. So what we're going to be talking about on the call is uniquely important to all the practices that are listening right now. In fact, as I travel around speaking throughout the U.S. and Canada, what I found is that with all the group practices popping up, there is a larger and larger disparity between the top tier practices and the bottom tier. Just like in India, where you've got this big socioeconomic gap. You've got some very wealthy in India, but you've got masses of those in poverty. It's happening in general dentistry, unfortunately. Insurance-based practices are pulling those new patients in. So what I found is the top tier practices out there in the U.S. that are actually going to be the winners in the next 5 years at least are those that have adopted these implant principles. And so the techniques that we're going to go over are not just my techniques. Yes, some of them are unique, and I've come up with them through the study of immediate implant placement. But moreover, these techniques are the techniques of the top 5-10% of dentists, GPs in the U.S. today that have chosen to make implants routine and have chosen to make them minimally invasive and chosen to do implants side by side a quadrant of fillings, side by side a crown or a root canal. So that's what we're talking about, how to easily integrate implants into your practice. And so we'll talk about this slide in a second. It's the denturist rundown. But let me just talk about implant CE today. 85% of implant continuing education is taught by specialists using specialist tools, techniques, and protocols. And so what we're going to go over tonight is implant training using general practitioners' tools, techniques, and protocols, which is vastly different. Specialists tend to flap an area. They tend to use a lot of bone grafting. They tend to use membranes. They tend to do a lot of things that just aren't comfortable in a GP office. We're going to be really honing in and talking about how to make implants extremely routine, how to make them so routine that you could do over 100 implants a month alongside your busy GP schedule. If I can do it, or if I've done it, then I assure you anyone on this call could do that if they really wanted to get into implant dentistry. So what direction is implant dentistry moving? It's definitely moving away from a specialty-only practice into something that 80% of the cases should be done by a GP. I was just meeting in Oklahoma City last week with a prominent prosthodontist and continuing education implant trainer, and he said that general dentists should be placing the majority of the cases out there, and that only about 20% should be referred to a specialist. As far as implant overhead, we're seeing the price of implants drop, and that's a good thing. It's making it more affordable for patients to choose. And then hourly production per procedure. Unfortunately, in this country right now, implants are getting really efficient, but the fees are still really high for implants. And so we've got a low time procedure, an efficient procedure, that is still living with the fees of the late 90s and early 2000s when we used to charge over $2,000 for an implant, $1,800 for an implant crown. Excuse me. And so I guess that's a good thing if you're really driven by money. But for the patient, it's not a great thing. Now, my average fee for an implant, abutment, and crown is $4,011. And I do most of mine for around that fee, but I'm able to give discounts. But the thing is, for a 5-minute implant, abutment, and crown procedure, that's about $4,400. And that last patient I showed you that we did yesterday, that's about $12,000 in implant dentistry. And so, anyway, that is tougher on patients because the fees are so high still, but it really is good for the overall revenue and overhead of the general practice, and we can reduce those fees. We've got a lot of flexibility now. So I'm just going to go over some of the modules that we go over in detail at the 2-day course that I teach. That's what I'm most used to teaching. So let's kind of cruise through some of that stuff because it's probably the best framework that we're going to learn the most for this call tonight. Immediate implant placement. When, what if there's bacteria present? Can we place an implant in that site? Acute versus chronic infection, primary stability. So let's go into that. Let's hit a little research first on immediate implantation. So this first chunk of research was done not too long ago. It was by a group of periodontists, and they found that immediate implantation into fresh sockets was just as successful as conventional implants. That was confirmed. That was a confirmation of the original studies that I did in 1999. And so the benefit of immediate placement is high success rates, preventing unnecessary bone resorption because we've got an implant in there right away, and of course reduced appointments because extractions, routine extractions, turn into extraction and implant appointments, which is a good thing. So I'm just going to use this diagram to talk about one of the procedures that I developed, which is the no-drill implant procedure. By no means are all my implants no-drill. I would say maybe 25, 35% of them on certain months. So we've got a unrestorable tooth. We insert the osteoconverter after extracting that tooth, place the osteoconverter. That converts the oval extraction socket into a socket that's suitable for an implant placement. It also scores the periodontal ligament, or I should say the sleeve of the socket in 2-millimeter increments. That allows for fresh blood flow and also highly bone-forming cells to envelop the implant. Usually what I'll do is I'll place a healing cap on that, come back about a month and a half later, put a final abutment on it, prep it directly in the mouth for the crown, and do a normal crown, send it to the lab. Or for you CEREC users, that's a perfect time to do a CEREC crown. So let's go over some cases with no-drill implants. Here's a case I did recently. Extracted the tooth, prepared the site with an osteoconverter, measured my implant against the tooth right here, placed the implant, put a healing cap over that, a couple stitches, saw the patient a couple months later for the final impression. Here's a little X bacil, and boom. So that was a no-drill implant procedure. What you can do is, in this case, I was did a full mouth lower extraction case, and put the roots right outside of the mouth, and was able to measure the roots. Here's where the periodontal ligament ends. So this is what we want to have the implant entirely enveloped. So you can see this implant is slightly wider and slightly longer than the tooth root. That's what you want. Now the osteoconverter, which is used before the implant placement, will actually straighten out curvatures like this, like you saw in that diagram before. So the bone around a tooth or the socket actually has quite a bit of collagen in it. So bone is not very fragile around most extracted teeth, so it actually is quite malleable and easily to be conformed to that implant. An osteoconverter is very similar to, it's basically a mixture of an osteotome and a bone condenser. That's all it is. So let's go through another no-drill implant case. This patient came in complaining of a tooth, number 19. It would happen to have a vertical root fracture, so we sectioned the tooth, took it out with a physics forceps here. Took them out. Look at that curve on that root. So we're able to take that curvature with an osteoconverter. This is an osteoconverter. And we were able to put it right in the center there. That's after it's healed. But let's go right here to right after the implant placement. I actually used one drill to go down the side of the septum. What that does is it allows the implant, as you're inserting it after the osteoconverter or at the same time if you're using the osteoconverter as the final implant, it actually slides the implant toward the center of the socket. So this was a no-drill implant procedure, but here's right afterwards. But what do we do about the gap here? There's the alveolar crest over here and here. What do we do about that? We used to bone graft, place a membrane, cover it up, go back in, place a healing cap, let that heal, go back in, place the final abutment, take an impression, send it to the lab. So it used to be like a 4 or 5 appointment thing. Now, definitely not that many appointments. So in this case, we just placed the implant. And by the way, this is the osteoconverter. It can be used as a final implant, too. The osteoconverter can. The osteoconverter happens to be the prestige series of implants of OsteoCore or OsteoReady, the implant company. So here we are. I actually use the osteoconverter as the final implant. You can see the top of it right there. And then I did a finger graft. We simply incise right here and then bring a piece of keratinized tissue around the implant. So that around the implant we have wonderful keratinized tissue. Now you might ask, hey, what's going to happen? That's exposed bone right there, and that's basically air in the socket. Is that going to heal? So with a finger graft, as long as you have keratinized tissue around the implant, that provides a cocoon for that bone graft, blood clot surrounding the implant to convert to collagen to turn to bone. So let's take a look at the final healing. Pay close attention to this area right here and watch how that heals. That slide's fuzzy in the transfer from Mac to PC. But I think you can see right there, that's where exposed bone was. It's all turned to keratinized tissue. And we have a beautiful site right here to put our final implant and a crown. So we'll put an abutment on that, prep it for a crown, send it directly to the lab, use a customizable stock abutment. Therefore, no more fussing around with the lab with little components and no buying analogs, transfers. You send it to the lab just like it's a normal crown, and they'll charge you the $100 or so that they charge you for a normal crown. Or you can put an abutment on it, prep it, and do a CEREC crown if you like. So I'm going to go over a couple cases of folks that graduated in the last few months from the 2-day program that I teach. This gentleman went right back to his practice. He had a number of osteoconverters. And so he said, you know what, I'm going to start with this first case. I'm sure many of you have seen this, obviously. Post-fractured a root, number 10. He took the tooth out and placed an implant right in there. You can see he placed that right where number 10 was. Let's back up a step. There's number 10. Even though we have a little periapical pathosis, no big deal. Just scrape that out, put the implant in place. Remember, there you can see the periapical pathosis where it was. Remember, bacteria can't live on implants. Bacteria needs a substrate to feed on, and bacteria cannot feed on titanium. So it's important to check, make sure there's no dehiscence in the buccal plate, and but you can do a no drill in a case just like that. So he placed a healing cap, no sutures, and he put a flipper on top of that. He's going to go back in, put a final abutment on it, prep it for a crown, and seat it just like a normal crown. There we go, number 10, normal crown right there. So anyway, this patient requested 4 maxillary implants for an overdenture. Oftentimes, we would have to extract these teeth, put the immediate denture in place. Well, with no drill implants, we can actually choose which sockets we'd like to put implants in. I happen to think number 4 would be a good site, number 6, maybe number 11, and number 13. Remember, with the osteoconverter, since you're not using a drill, with the no-drill implant procedure, we're not going to worry about the sinus up here. Not going to worry about that, because we might do a little sinus bump up there with the implant, but with no drill, you're never going to tear the sinus membrane. So it makes it a very excuse me, a very safe procedure. So let's take a look at the result here. There are 4 implants. You can see a little sinus bump there. And so the no-drill procedure makes it very easy to do a sinus bump if we need to. So that took about 20 minutes to extract the teeth, but only about 11 minutes to place the 4 implants. And so I think we need to reduce our fees for these, because can we really feel good about charging $10,000 for 4 abutments and 4 crowns, 4 abutments and 4 implants, if it only takes 11 minutes to do it? I think we need to charge less. So I think we'll see that over time. If it's that easy placing 4 implants on an upper with the no-drill implant procedure, I think our fees will start coming down. But right now they're really high. So I'd recommend everybody on this call, if you place implants, maybe give your patients a break if you're learning these procedures, charge a little less. And if you don't place implants, by all means, we'd welcome you to the 2-day course. We love teaching that here. And so we'll make kind of an offer at the end of the call for those of you who kind of strike something in your heart here that you really want to get going with it. But let's talk about this no drill case number 2. This patient came in. We were going to do extraction of number 1 and a root canal, core and crown on number 2. I got in there, boy, just like I had told the patient before the procedure, that decay went right to the furcation. So I told her, like I had mentioned before, that we may need to do an implant. Sure enough, she was fine with it. It cost a little bit more to do the implant, but of course took less time than doing the root canal. So we went ahead and took out number 1. We placed a no-drill implant in the lingual root socket and put a healing cap on top. She came back a month later to do the crown. Another patient here. Let's go over some more immediates. Let's transition from the no-drill implant procedure to the 1-drill implant procedure. This patient lost a bridge on the upper right from 2 to 5, and all he had left were these roots. You can see there's some periapical pathosis right here, and you can see the gutta percha, the root canal used to be way up here. You can see a little bit of sealer way up there. So anyway, we extracted these teeth, curetted it out, took a look at the bone, did 1 drill just to get us up to this level where it used to be, did 1 drill just to get us up to this base of the sinus where it used to be, and placed a couple implants in there. And so we'll show that slide a little bit later. But let's talk a little bit more about the osteoconverter. We're going to show some pictures of more cases at the end of the webinar, but stay tuned, certainly, because at the end of the webinar, we're going to make a special offer to Tom Orrance folks to receive 3 free osteoconverters. And so that's good for about $12,000 to $13,000 in dentistry. So those 3 osteoconverters, yes, they do serve as the final implant. It's the only one approved for the no-drill procedure right now. So you'd receive those guys, and that'll give you $12,000 worth of implant dentistry with those 3 free osteoconverters. So here they are. These are regular implants by OsteoCore, different sizes, a little inventory. This is the osteoconverter with the osteoconverter tool. So it slides right into the end. There's our osteoconverter. And the threads are a little different than a normal implant. They're a very sharp thread. If you were to spread or unspiral the threads, it would be as sharp as a steak knife. And so that's what makes the osteoconverter a tool that's very amenable to a socket site. So these 3 are osteoconverters right here. These are taken out of their packaging. And these guys up here, like I said, are different sizes implants. We're gonna get into that. But you can see these drills have a little bit of a taper to them. These are end cutting and side cutting. So we can actually move the socket site over, if you will, to protect a fragile bone wall or something. And so anyway, there they are. We'll show that picture at the end again. But we're going to go start at the beginning at Module 1, minimally invasive soft tissue approaches. So the 5 approaches that I like to teach are the high-speed drill approach, the mini envelope incision, the tissue punch, and the direct drill. I usually use a combination of the mini envelope and the high-speed drill approach. These are both no suture, no flap techniques. And so I'm just gonna slide out of this right now, and I'm gonna go to a video and and kind of show you. Let's pop into this guy right here. There's a good picture of some swimming stuff. This is on my office manager's computer. So here we are. Let's show the mini envelope. We actually prepped a bridge while we're doing it. Right here, we're sliding that keratinized tissue away. Okay, we're just sliding it away. We want to have good keratinized tissue around the implant, and we're exposing the bone, and we're really getting a feel for the bone. If you watch me feel for where that bone is, and we're going to use 2 drills for this implant. It's just going to be a 3.7 by 10 with the final abutment on it, and we're going to finish that with the final drill. We're also going to do the same for number 18 right after we place this. So that's it. We just tighten them in with our fingers, and then take the ratchet and drive it all the way down. You can see with this implant, there's a margin that we're going to want to bury just below the gum line. You see that? That's the abutment. We're right below the gum line. So let's finish off number 18 and back. Like I just said, number 22 had lost its buckle plate, so I did a bridge from 23 to 24 up in front. Bury that so the margin is just below the gum line. It has a self-stopping component, so it makes it really easy to place them. There they are. Look at that keratinized tissue, how nicely it's done on number 20. And so we're just going to take these customizable abutments off, and then we're going to screw the same abutments back on after we take the purple and green thing off. So like I said, the abutment comes with these implants, and we're putting it back into place after I've customized it outside the mouth. What I'm going to do once we place these abutments in the mouth is simply go through there. Look at that keratinized tissue just to take a peek. I mean, it looks like the tooth was just extracted. So that's what the mini envelope incision does. But let's go to prepping those directly in the mouth. So as you can see, we already prepped the bridge prep. We're prepping the crowns. We're going to place the impression and do the bridge and 2 implants all in the same appointment there. So that was basically a view of a quick view of 2 5-minute implant, abutment, and crown procedures, and a bridge. If you're doing crown and bridge at the same time of implant, make sure you prep the crowns first, then do the implants. Because if you do the implants first, you can get that slurry of dentin into your surgical site, and we want to keep that surgical site clean. So that particular procedure has about a 98-99% success rate. If one did fail on you, which it shouldn't, it's actually really easy. Just unscrew it, wait a couple months, put a new one back in, and you've got another 98% success rate. So we'll show maybe another little video toward the end of our deal here tonight. Module 2, as we know, endo retreats have a 67% failure rate, and so a lot of dentists are kind of switching over to implants. 40% of single implants are immediate placements in a general dentistry practice. So for those of you that are listening on the call, or excuse me, watching the webinar tonight, if you do a lot of emergency extractions, I'm going to read you a text message from Steve Deloach. He had gone to some implant training from one of the big implant trainers. I think it was Carl Misch or Aaron Garge or something, who are wonderful trainers. But he said, you know what? Learning implants in this fashion is just not for my GP practice. It's kind of a whole different art and science than the regular root canal crown stuff I'm doing. So he watched me as I trained one of his friends in one of my one-on-ones down in Mississippi, Ripley, Mississippi. It was actually Chris Griffin. And he said, man, I got to go to the 2-day training. So I had stopped doing the travel around the country type thing. So he ended up coming out to Oregon, where I do all my 2-day trainings, and took the course, and ended up, shortly after, I think it was 1 or 2 weeks after, he text messaged me. He said, this implant thing is really catching on. He said, I just did an immediate place implant. I've got 2 more scheduled today and 1 tomorrow. So he had 4 implants in those 2 days, and I did the math on that, and just the implant procedures that he was doing, not considering the rest of his busy GP day, was well over, just the implants were well over the average GP production for the day. So he's a happy camper. He sends me emails and texts of his implants he's doing. He's doing great with them, fabulous success rates. So let me talk about Chris Griffin, because some of you may have heard of Chris Griffin. He's in Mississippi. I flew down there with a full implant armamentarium. He had never placed an implant before. From 8 o'clock that morning that I went down there to 3 o'clock, he saw something like 5 patients, did 8 implants, and I won't tell you the production amount that it was, but it was basically about the average full month's production for the average GP in the U.S., all from 8 o'clock to 3 o'clock. So Chris has done exceedingly well with implants, and with these techniques we're going over, it's hard not to do really well at implants as a GP. And so these are really fun techniques to talk about. Right down here, the 2-appointment implant abutment and crown versus the 3 to 6 appointment one. The 5-minute implant abutment and crown procedure is really a 2-appointment procedure. First appointment, we place the implant, and then we put on a customizable stock abutment. We prep that for the crown, and then we see the patient 6 to 8 weeks later to seat the crown. Some of the benefits of this versus the, I guess let's call it the old school techniques. We don't have an expensive customized abutment. We customize our own stock abutment in the mouth. This not only is much more accurate, but it saves us a lot of money with the lab. Let's go over implant overhead. I'll go over what OsteoCore or OsteoReady, which is my implant manufacturing company, sells them for, because they're the prices I know. I know most of the prices of the other companies, but for the highest end implant that we sell, it's $156. The abutment's $45, and usually your implant crown should be about $98. So you're sitting under $300 for a $4,000 to $5,000 procedure. Now that is a really good low variable overhead for the procedure, and that's why I think implants are overpriced today. And it's just a two-appointment procedure, and so we'll go over another video in a second because it looks like folks are like that first video from some emails. Let's take a look at this. Patient comes in, they lost a 3-unit bridge 2 months prior. Just like we saw in the video, we do a 2-drill series with these 2 implants, place the implants, then customize these customizable stock abutments. Remember, we just cut off the top, the green or the purple, and then we customize this customizable stock abutment. What's the difference between a customizable stock abutment and just a stock abutment? There is 2 to 3 times more titanium in these abutments, so you can prep them like a normal crown without getting concerns over the abutment stability. So there's the final bridge in place right there. That was a 2-appointment bridge prep. So that fee in my office for that two appointments, it took me maybe a half an hour appointment to do the 2 implants, which was about 5 minutes per implant and abutment. And then, boy, not much to see, another half-hour appointment, so an hour of chair time, and that was what the patient was scheduled for what is this, 2 implants, 4-tooth bridge. That's about a $9,500 procedure. I discounted, I think, to $6,900. But for 2 appointments, boy, that's a great procedure for a general dentist and a great procedure for a patient. Look at the gum health back here. A little redness on the gums here because we just taken the abutment off, put it back on, but fun stuff. Let's talk about anteriors for a little bit. Anteriors can be very technique sensitive. So I'm going to go over a technique that makes it very easy for a general dentist to do anterior implants very predictably. Remember, if you don't flap the gum tissue is very easy to manage, and we have very predictable aesthetic results. So let's take a look here. This is the initial pilot hole. I do my initial osteotomy with what's called a duo burr. A duo burr is a surgical burr for a high-speed handpiece, especially for implants. Okay, so what I do here is I usually do a little tiny hole in the gums first, and then I look at the holes, I examine the holes. I use my anesthetic syringe to see where the bone is around there, and then I widen the holes out in the direction that I need to compensate if my holes weren't just right. And implants are very forgiving, so your hole doesn't need to be perfect. So anyway, we did the high-speed handpiece at first, and lower left here. This was a 1-drill procedure. So we're using our one drill and going right down that initial osteotomy. Then we placed our 2 implants. Here's the second implant being placed. By the way, this straight driver right here is the same tool that is used with the OSTEOCONVERTER. So if you do end up getting using the OSTEOCONVERTERs, you'll already have this tool for the implants. So anyway, we placed the implants here, and right down here we've just customized the abutments, and we took the impression. We used X-Facil, did a subgingival margin, took the impression, and as you can see, I put a score line on the facial portion of these abutments because we took these abutments off and placed a flipper. On the posteriors, I leave that customized abutment in place. On the posteriors, I actually take the abutment, on the anteriors, I take the abutments off, place a flipper. Here are the crowns. Look at what happened. No papilla before, but look at this. Wonderful papilla right in the ear. Comes right up here. Very nice. And so that was a 2-appointment anterior crown case. And I normally don't just spout out the fees for that, but I know a lot of you are crunching numbers. So that case in my office is about a $9,000 case for anterior, so $4,500 per implant, abutment, and crown deal. And so, anyway, that's a good case, good starter case. And remember, if you do your anterior implants on folks that already have some anterior compromises and have no problem with them, then those are good, safe anterior cases to start out with. This should be 9 and 10. Module 4, overdentures. Let's go over that a little bit. I love overdentures and implants. As you know, I used to do them every day. I used to, place up to 30 implants a day with 109 extractions. Overdentures are nice because it's very forgiving. When the overdenture snaps onto the implants, there's no aesthetic concerns. You've got a clean slate down there, plenty of bone. So I'm going to go over an ad that I have used over the last few years that has brought in over $2.5 million in implant dentistry for myself and my practices. So feel free to use that ad. If you'd like to get it after this, you can email Tom. He can probably get it to you. I'll get it to Tom, or however he works that. But feel free to use anything you like from this presentation, even the marketing techniques that I talk about. So less adjustments. I would rather do an implant denture than a regular denture any day. In fact, I refer out regular dentures, but if there are implants under there, I love to do them. Very few adjustments. And so anyway, let me talk about MFLs. That's a mental foramen locator. I developed that product when I was traveling about doing implants at denturist practices. But what it does is it allows you to place 2 to 4 implants for a lower denture without worrying one bit over the nerve. And so let's talk about that. But it basically allows us to do a flapless surgery without worrying about the mental foramen whatsoever. Take a look at this. Patient comes in, wants 4 lower implants, and normally what oftentimes dentists will do, implantologists will do, is flap it back and try and look at the mental foramen. I don't know about you, but that makes me a little queasy playing with the nerve. So these mental foramen locators, basically, let's describe this. Patient comes in, I'd like 4 lower implants, please, with locators so I can snap my denture in. Basically, we give the patient the fee, numb the patient up, then hook these into the gum tissue, take a pan, and now we know right where the mental foramen is. It's right here in that particular picture, and it's right here in this picture. So now we know in relation to these mental foramen locators exactly where the nerve is. So we can comfortably place the implants and not impinge on the nerve. If you were placing 2 implants, I would place them probably site number 26 and 23, and then you're even further from the nerve. So at the end of the webinar, I'm going to talk about how you can get your hands on some of these. We just finally got them some developed, and they'll be out at the end of this month. Anyone that comes to the course will be able to receive these guys and place their surgeries with them. So mental foramen locators given out at the course, and they're an awesome tool. One of the reasons I love overdentures is when you market for overdentures with implants, you get about 3 to 5 times more response than regular general dentistry marketing. Why is that? And why did I find that out? General dentists market a lot more. General dentists don't like dentures. If you market for implant dentures with extractions and dentures, boy, phones will ring. So that's, I market for a lot of implant dentures, and I'll tell you what, from a per hour production, I don't think you can beat implant overdentures. This was a 20-minute procedure, and the fee was $10,000. I just discounted it to $8,500, but boy, I mean, for 20 minutes, $8,500, that's a great production for the GP. I guarantee my implants for life. That's a great result for the patient. What a win-win there. And so here's the ad that's brought in over $2.5 million in dentistry over the last 2.5, 3 years. It's kind of cheesy. This is an old picture of me and my family. There's a little bit of patient education here about implants. Catch them with, pique their interest with dental implants in bold right at the top. Patients love a free implant consultation at $250 value. And then free consultations for extractions, implants, and dentures. And so fabulous ad has brought in a lot of implant dentistry. Here's someone that said they didn't like their lower partial. We put 2 implants in, we took the clasps off. They love their partial now. Easy to do. Patient that wanted 4 upper implants. We did the 1 drill implant procedure. Easy to place, and another great application for upper implants. 2 lower implants. How much bone is needed? You don't need that much bone. For starters, I wouldn't do it. If it was my first 100 implants, I would probably pass up a case like this. But these are easy cases. I've done hundreds of cases like this with not much bone, and they work out great. I actually immediately load them because I get about a 60 to 80 torque on the implants. So anyway, same deal, 2 lowers here. Someone who wanted implants under a partial, just pop the implants in wherever they have partial teeth. Now the patient loves their partials. Fixed detachable for partial and full arch, and so screw-retained hybrid dentures. So it's pretty much just as easy to do a full screw-retained hybrid set of teeth as it is an overdenture. You just use a little different abutment. We teach this at the course. Formally, it's called I've named it the 3-appointment full mouth implant reconstruction case. And so I charge, my retail fee is $25,000 per arch, and that covers all 3 appointments. There are a lot of places that charge a lot more, and I oftentimes discount mine. But we'll talk about how to do that. At the end of this webinar, we're also going to go over briefly a couple of those cases. Let's just show how efficient the 1 drill implant procedure is. I did not do all of this stuff. The patient had gotten into a bar fight and was a heavy meth user and lost all their teeth, but they couldn't wear the denture because there was so much gadgetry in there. Patient came in without these implants in place, and the patient said they wanted 10 implants. And I said, wow, okay, that sounds good. He looked kind of raggedy, was a meth user, and I figured, wow, is he going to be able to afford this? So I just said, 10 implants, that's going to cost, probably $25,000 with the abutments and everything. He said no problem. His dad used to own one of the big breweries up in Seattle, and his dad owned 550 rental houses. So I believed him, but I wanted to make sure before I placed the implants, so I called the dad. Dad came in, wrote a check for $25,000, and in that same hour-and-a-half appointment, the patient left with 10 implants. How nice is that to be able to give a long-lasting solution and do it in the same appointment as their consultation? So these are 1 drill implants, which means we just go right through the keratinized tissue, do our initial 5 to 6 millimeters in the bone with our high-speed handpiece, and then use 1 drill and then 1 implant. They screw in place really fast, and the patients love them. So overdenture stuff. And here's the metal framing right here. He actually was numb down here because of his accident, so in those cases you don't have to worry so much. But we went over the metal framings. Whenever patients start doing implants, I'll tell you what, they usually want to do more. So one quick statistic, you guys will love this. the average implant patient is 4 to 5 times more likely to refer more patients to the practice. So implants are not only a hot topic with the dentist, implants are a hot topic with patients as well. So implant patients are 3 to 5 times more likely to refer new patients to your practice. They like to talk about their implants. They don't like to talk about their fillings or root canals they had done. So this is that bridge we were talking about earlier, just some of the details on it. So let's talk about Module 8, accommodating bone in the Pareto principle. I probably only bone graft once every 3 months. Can you believe that? Once every 3 months I bone graft. I believe in utilizing the bone that the patient has available rather than manipulating the bone to create bone in another area. Number one, bone grafting we found is fairly unpredictable, even with tedious membranes. So what I do is I choose the implant, both the size, length, and width, that will fit the bone that the patient has available. 6 periodontists did a study in the year 2006 on 5 to 8 millimeter long implants. They found that short implants were just as successful as 10 to 13 millimeter implants. So that opens up a whole new world to us as implant GPs. Basically, we are able to place implants in site number 14, 15, or 18, 19 without worrying about the sinus or the nerve, because we can place short implants now. Let's go over a few of those. Right here, a little sinus bump. There's a 5-minute implant abutment and crown. Right here, patient came in. This was another appointment where we actually did the 3 implants during the same 1-hour appointment as the consult and seated the crowns 30 days later. But look at that. Let's place a short implant rather than doing a sinus augmentation. Just go in, just like we showed previously, and place that implant. Look at how clean the margins can be if we do that direct technique in the mouth. Margins can be really accurate when we do it directly in the mouth. So up there, let's accommodate the bone rather than do bone grafting. Here's a case. Patient wanted implants. We're using immediate implant techniques here. We did a no drill up here. We did a 1 drill down here, and we did 2 conventionals in these sites. There we go. Took an impression a month and a half later after all that soft tissue healed, and then seated the final crown. So let's take a little break, and we are going to show another video. And so let's pop out of this guy. And I think we're going to go to another number 30. So let's just show a quick video. This is called the mini envelope incision. An oral surgeon had placed some bone graft material in here. So you're going to see some little white chunks of synthetic bone graft come out of this site. So as you can see, there's not going to be much bleeding with what we do here, a mini envelope incision. Once again, that's to preserve the keratinized tissue. And we're just going to do a 2-drill procedure here. We're going to use an 8 millimeter implant. Let's not get nervous about the nerve. Let's stay far away from the nerve. Place just an 8 millimeter implant. We're going to use an Efficiency Plus implant here. That's the implant that has the abutment on it. It's a customizable abutment. We just did the final drill, and now we're going to place our implant. It's got a little. We're just going to basically screw it in with the abutment on top. You can see that synthetic bone to the buccal portion there. And then we're going to torque it all the way. I like to stop 1 drill short of the final. That way we get a good torque. You can see the patient's head moving. You know you've got a good torque then. And now we're going to do the final crown preparation right after placing the implant. This is the 5-minute implant abutment and crown procedure. So right after placing the implant, I'm prepping it for the crown. And we're going to just take a regular check bite impression, send it to the lab just like a normal crown. Seat this crown, I would say about 6 weeks. You can seat it in 30 days if you want, but I usually wait 6 weeks, even 8 weeks. And there we go, another video. So let's hop on over here back to our PowerPoint and cruise through some of these slides here. These are the implants on that bridge I showed you earlier. Remember the immediate implants? We placed a couple implants up there. We used a one drill technique in this case. I'll get my pointer here, and let's see here. There they are. So you can see we weren't into the sinus there. We were just in the socket site, but these implants, these Efficiency Plus implants, are great for sinus bumps because they've got a rounded end and just pushes the sinus membrane up a little bit. So let's talk about, if I'm not bone grafting, how do these sockets heal? Well, just like we talked about earlier, see this gap on the buccal? I just do what I call a finger graft. Take a little finger of keratinized tissue, suture it around the implant so we have nice keratinized tissue right there. And look at the top view right there. You can see there's a little hole in there even. So how is that hole going to heal without a membrane and bone grafting? Well, your blood clot is the best bone graft. It very predictably turns to collagen, which turns to bone. And instead of getting a big defect there, look at this. That looks really healthy there. So that's just about 30 days healing with the pedicle graft, and it formed all nice keratinized tissue in there. So that's called the finger graft, one of the 5 flapless techniques. So anyway, patient comes in with number 15 sore, emergency extraction, turns, emergency extraction, and implant. Same thing here, number 15, tender. If we were to take this tooth and out and not place an implant, we'd probably lose all our bone. But with an osteoconverter and the no drill, look at this. Immediate placement with an emergency extraction appointment. 2 upper no drill implants. I chose this portion here and this portion. You can do 2 implants on the upper for an upper overdenture. Another good case. Let's talk about angled implants. The abutments we spoke about, you can actually prep them up to 45 degrees. And so in this particular case, we did a no drill here. We did an angled implant to avoid the sinus, and then 1 implant right here. Very easy to do. There's our implants. You can see the angulation here. Look at that. But the final abutments, they're preppable up to 35, 45 degrees. You can see how we took most of this portion off. Here's the final bridge. Real nice, healthy gums at the base here. That's what we want to see. Another example, let's place an implant here, but instead of doing a sinus bump or sinus graft here, excuse me, why don't we angle the implant to capture that bone? Patient also wanted 2 implants down here, 4.7 by 8 and another 4.7 by 8. The nerve's way down here. So let's obey the 6 millimeter rule and not get close to that nerve. So let's not sweat it. Let's use an 8 millimeter implant. Remember, they're just as successful. So you can see we've got a nice angle here. We do not impinge on the sinus. See how we've prepped that crown? So we've got more prepping back here. We took that impression for the bridge. We did these 2 implants as well. So we placed all 4 implants, and we took the impression for the 3-unit bridge up here and 2 implants, 2 crowns down here. $18,000 case, the 2-appointment case, and it took total chair time maybe an hour, hour and a half. So do you think we should charge $18,000 anymore for implants? I don't think so. For an hour of chair time, I don't know if it's fair for patients. So those are some of the techniques that we go over at the class. Here's an angled abutment, just an example of what we can do with the sinus and an angled abutment. Implants and crown and bridge, let's just shoot through some of that. We just did a 1-file endo on this tooth, and we placed an implant, and we prepped this tooth for a crown. So we did a root canal, core and crown on 18, and an implant, an abutment and crown on 19. So the 5-minute implant, abutment, and crown. So that was all the same in the same hour, hour and a half appointment. And look at how pink and healthy that tissue is back there. Look at how the papilla has healed, and then we seeded this implant crown next after that. But I just want to use it to show you how nicely the papilla heals around the final abutments if you leave the final abutment in place after you prep the implant. Here we prep number 12 for a crown and number 13 implant abutment and crown. Advanced cases, let's talk about these. This another example of angled implants. This is for our advanced course. We're not going to get too deeply into that, but these are cases you can do a couple of years after you placed them. And so patient wanted 2 implants on the lower and 4 on the upper. Here we go. We did a hybrid bridge on the top, 2 implant abutment and crowns, 5-minute implant abutment and crowns down below. That was about a $28,000 case. I gave him a big discount on that just because it didn't take us long at all. But you can see how we angled it in front of the sinus, angled it in front of the sinus. And we see that's what it looks like after the implants are placed. Look at the angulation. Here are what are called multi-unit abutments. You can see it almost looks like an over-prepped crown on the top, this teepee. That allows us to place a framework on top. Here's some lab analogs and wax try-in. Another case like that. We'll cruise through some of these advanced ones, pop onto that. And so what I'm going to do is start to wrap it up a little bit here. And let's kind of cruise. We're actually almost done here. We did really well time-wise. So let me put it on this. I'm going to pop through a couple more advanced ones. Another case here. Oh, thanks, Kelly. Okay, sounds good. These are multi-unit abutments for the lab. Final seat. This is actually a dentist that went to the 2-day course, full mouth extractions. That's Scott Peterson. He'd never placed implants before, but look at that. He did a wonderful job on an all-on-4 case. Turned out great. Terry Vines here. This was his first implant after the course. 5-minute implant, abutment and crown. That, of course, paid the entire course fee on his first implant. He did a great job. He's in California. He has a 17-operatory practice, has 4 associates and 2 specialist associates. He went on to do this. When people start doing implants like this, they start to love them. And so he actually did a full mouth, the 3-appointment, full mouth implant reconstruction, 3 months after the course, 3 months after starting implants. He did a fabulous job. Patient wanted to have a fixed upper. The fee for that was $25,000 in his area, so that's what he charged on that case. Dr. Kwan, this is his first implant here, did a great job with the 5-minute implant abutment and crown procedure. This is a good ad if you'd like some good ads from around the country that are pulling people in. Scott Watterson, immediate implants right after the course. He extracted these teeth and did immediate placements. A couple of them were no drill. Look at how nicely he did. These are some of his first implants after the course. He doesn't even have a pan yet. So we're going to wait 6 weeks for the final impression. So here is 10 implants, a kit. For those of you that want to take advantage of the 3 osteoconverters, which are these 3 guys right here, if you register for the course tonight, you'll get $700 off the course. Normally $4,500, so that'd be $3,800. If you register, actually by Friday, you get that discount. If you register tonight by either going to the website right here, or by calling Kelly at that number, or by emailing Kelly at the bottom there, then you actually get the 3 free osteoconverters and the course for $3,800. The osteoconverter will give you about $12,000 in implant dentistry. So I'm going to leave that up there for a little bit. I might go back to this one slide just to show you what the osteoconverters are. These are the osteoconverters. You get those 3 free with registering for the course if you register tonight, and the $700 off. So basically, your first implant placement, remember the osteoconverter also serves as the final implant. If you place another brand of implants, that's fine. You just use the osteoconverter first and then unscrew it with this device and then place the implant of your choosing, whether it be Zimmer or Noble BioCare or BioHorizons. Simply unscrew the osteoconverter and screw that implant back into place. If you say, hey, I saw the cases just that you showed tonight, and if you want to buy the initial kit with the 3 osteoconverters and 10 implants, it is tonight's special. I think it's $3,900. So your first implant will more than pay for your entire surgical kit and 10 implants. And so we don't have any sales reps on the ground. We have sales people, but we don't have sales reps. That's one of the reasons we're able to sell them really reasonably. And all we ask that you would do, if you do take advantage of these prices, is please, please pass the savings along to the patient. That's my big goal in teaching, is that us general dentists would start to be the top tier and not the bottom tier in the next 10 years. We'd be the top tier, those that adopt these techniques. And please pass these savings on to your patients, get really proficient with implants, and do some great service to those in your practice. So I'm going to go back to the other slide right here, and I'm going to go over these offers one last time for those that didn't get it. But basically, if you register for the course by calling Kelly or emailing Kelly or going onto this website to register, it'll be $700 off. So that means $3,800 instead of $4,500, kind of a Tom Orant discount deal. And then also, if you register tonight, Kelly, right down here, is available to take the registration, or you can do it online. If you register for tonight, we will give you the 3 free osteoconverters, which will give you $12,000 worth of implant dentistry in your practice. And so that is the deal. Would love to see you at the 2-day course. The next 2 months are booked solid. After that, we do have openings here. I'm going to be speaking in Destin, Florida, at Woody's event in April. I'm going to be doing a full-day workshop and a breakout session at the county meeting in Vegas in April. Next week, I'm speaking to a group of over 100 dentists with Howard Ferran in Scottsdale. That's the reason we have the deadline. We want to see where we're at and see how many slots we need to reserve for Howard Ferran next week with the meeting. So anyway, that's why we've got a deadline. We've got to be able to reserve slots for Howard Ferran next week. And the free osteoconverters are because Tom twisted my arm and said, hey, my guys always get something free. What are you willing to give? And I said, well, let's do that. Give them $12,000 in their of implant dentistry through 3 free osteoconverters. And so this is good. Tom, I bet we have some questions there. I'd love to keep continuing on, but do we have any questions out there, Tom?
We certainly do, and that was, Brady, that was nothing short of amazing. Every once in a while, I sold my practices 9 years ago. Every once in a while, I watch something that makes me just a little bit jealous that I can't walk in tomorrow morning and do something. And this is, I would love to do this. It's just brilliant work. All right, let's jump right into the questions, and we'll get as many of them as we can. First one comes.
Thanks. I appreciate that, by the way. I'm glad you feel that way.
Yeah, I do. It was brilliant. And I love also your philosophy of make this something that the patients can afford, do it at a fee that you're going to make plenty of money, get the overhead down way low because you're not paying for all these crazy intermediary things that everybody is paying for. And you know, we will, as general dentists, we will become the #1 placer and restorer of implants. With all that, Dr. Gary Small asks, it seems to me that most of the implant advertising that I see is low price as the main feature. Could you comment on that?
Very good comment. So I work part-time, and I do a lot of implants. And in my part-time practice, last month we did over $200,000 a month, and we're in a small town of 20,000. And so and I just started this practice mainly because it was a great location for an institute. But this practice is less than 2 years old, and it's up to doing great numbers with implants. I only mention that to kind of show some neat marketing techniques for implants. So I don't like the big low-cost ads. What I like to do is talk about your location as being so I should probably back up a step. What I do is we talk about ourselves as being an institute for learning here. And a lot of my students, since they actually have had me come in or have come to the course, they actually talk about a discount on implants through the Implant Efficiency Institute. And so I can show a couple of the ads, but what it does is it does offer a slight discount on the implants. It allows for a free implant consultation, but more importantly, it breaks down the credibility barrier because the location is an institute or because you're looking for patients for or through the Implant Efficiency Institute. You're able to give them a discount. So you're not just discounting the price to discount it. You're doing it through the institute. And so I can get into that a little bit more, but basically to answer your question, you do not have to offer big discounts on there. All you need to do is say free implant consultation. And I also like to offer a lot of educational materials in the implant stuff. If you can speak to their need and use benefit-driven statements, you'll get people to call who want a denture that's not loose, who want to replace their teeth with 2 very efficient appointments, who don't want bone grafting, who don't want to do it over 6 months or 12 months, who do not want open surgery. They want a flapless technique. They don't want sutures. And so I usually go toward the benefits. And so anyway, I'm working on some ads that folks can use that have taken the 2-day deal that basically have a schematic of the procedure, like the OSTEOCONVERTER picture I showed. It's animated, and that was for a reason, to show patients that you can have a bad tooth extracted and a new implant put in at the same time. So I think that was a great question.
Excellent. We have our next question from Dr. Arnie Weinstein. And Arnie asks, what are the startup costs associated with implementing implant placement?
That's an excellent question, Arnie. I'm going to go back to the screen in a second, but I'm going to flip off it for now. So these implants are very similar if anyone places implants. They're similar to Noble Biocare's Replace Select, these implants back here. They're also similar to the Noble Active. They've got the same, very similar internal hex design as BioHorizons. I'm mentioning these big companies because these implants are manufactured in the same manufacturing facilities. So they're basically, all these companies manufacture a titanium screw that works 98.7% of the time. And and if it fails, you can put a new one in, and then you're going to have success there. So to get into implant dentistry, I can't speak for the other companies. I could probably speak for a couple of them, but I'll just speak for OsteoCore. We've now rebranded it as OsteoReady, so it's more amenable to patients. But to start with 10 implants and a kit and 3 osteoconverters, if you already place implants or at least already have the drill and the motor, it's $3,800 for your first, let's see, what is that? For your first $52,000 in implant dentistry. So this implant kit right here with 13 implants, 3 of them being osteoconverters, will provide you your first $53,000 in implant dentistry. And that, for those on the call tonight, is $3,900 for that. And that's got the prosthetic screws, the ratchet, the hand driver. So let's say you don't place any implants right now, and you needed to purchase the drill and the motor and everything. So to get all that stuff, the drill, motor, hand pieces, you're looking at, through most companies, anywhere from $15,000 to $28,000. Through OsteoCore, it's $7,900. And we usually recommend doing like a 0% financing for that until you recoup your investment. So the payments per month are about $550 for the whole deal. And if you just do 1 implant a month, if you're charging the fee I do, which is average, $4,011. If you just do 1 no-drill implant a month, that's it. You more than pay for the implant itself, and you basically pay for the whole kit in 2 months and can pay off your loan if you did that. So that's a great question. Yeah, $7,900 for everything, or for those on the call tonight, 10 implants, a good variety, a kit, and the 3 osteoconverters for $3,900.
Well spoken. Next question is from Dr. Amin Jaffer. Armin asks, did you prep the abutments in the mouth? He actually asked that way early in the evening, and so my guess is that you showed that thereafter that you were actually prepping in the mouth.
Yeah, I'd like to hit that question anyway, even though it became clear that we were prepping them in the mouth toward the end. If anyone has heard of the problems that cement causes around implants, I'm sure you're kind of nodding right now. If you get cement around an implant, you can get bone loss. Here's the reason why I prep the abutment in the mouth and leave it there. These abutments are the highest grade of titanium, which allows for the periodontium, the keratinized tissue, to create a seal that against the abutment. So they actually create a physical seal around the abutment. That would be the area right above the implant itself all the way up to the gingival crest. So if you prep the abutment in the mouth and leave that abutment in there after you take the impression for posterior teeth, when you cement the final crown, who can guess if any cement is going to break that perio seal? Absolutely not. It's not going to go down to the implant, not going to cause bone loss problems. The cement is going to squirt up and out the gingival, the sulcus there, and not go around your implant. That's one of the main reasons why we like to prep them and leave them in the mouth for at least 4 to 6 weeks. It takes about 4 to 6 weeks to create a really good, tough perio seal. A great question.
Next question comes from Dr. Michael Steinberg. Michael asks, can these techniques be applied to mini implants? And second question by same doctor is, what if the socket's abscessed or periodontally involved?
So, great question. If you place mini implants, and you're watching right now, that's a great prerequisite to these techniques, because a lot of these techniques were adopted from mini implant placement. Minis did some great things for us as dentists. Now, we found recently that a conventional implant is a very stable, lifelong implant. We've also found that many of the mini companies are considering a mini more of a 5 to 7 year solution. I'm sure many of you on the call have had failed minis or sheared off minis. So let me just talk about minis for a second. I think they're great to have in your arsenal. But the question I ask everybody on the call tonight is, if you could place a conventional implant that's for sure 98.7% chance going to last the rest of that patient's life, versus placing a mini that they're now saying are a 5 to 7 year fix, of course some last longer, why would we not maybe place the conventional implant? Another deal here is, it's all about surface area with implants. With a conventional implant, we can place a very short 8 millimeter or 6 millimeter implant that's wider, a wider, short implant. Believe it or not, an 8 by 4.7 has more surface area than a 13 millimeter mini, a lot more. So to answer the question, I think those that place minis should definitely start doing what we learned on the webinar tonight. I mean, immediately. It opens up so many more cases. You've got cases where the nerve is 13 millimeters down and you wouldn't want to do a mini, but you can do conventional. You've got cases, areas number 14, 15, 8 millimeters of bone before the sinus, couldn't do minis, but you can do conventional. So if you start placing conventional and you currently place minis, boy, the average person that places minis that does the course usually starts placing 4 times more implants within 60 days, just because you've got so many more opportunities for it. But that's a fabulous question, and yes, you can use these techniques with minis.
Next question comes from Dr. Mina Saif. Hello, Dr. Frank. Thank you very much for the presentation. Do you get primary stability with no prep immediate implant placement?
So, whenever I place implants, I always shoot for having over 45 newtons of torque. I usually actually get about 65 to 95, and recent studies have shown implants torqued up to 178 newtons still do well. In dental school, we learned anything over 40 newtons, and you're going to have bone necrosis. What we found since then is you can actually torque up to 178 newtons, and the bone over the next day to 2 days, actually, because of the collagen in the bone, it expands and it relaxes. So great question. I always, whether they're immediate implants or a 1-drill implant procedure or a 5-minute implant, abutment and crown, I'm shooting for over 45 newtons. So I always want primary stability. But here's the key. Whenever you do an immediate place implant, in those cases, I usually put a healing cap on and let it heal for 6 weeks. So if the tooth was lost a month or 3 years earlier, that's when I'll take the impression at the same time. But if you're doing an immediate place implant, I'll place a healing cap, then take that off and take an impression 6 weeks later. So in that way we don't contaminate the socket with all that titanium shavings and whatnot. But that was a fabulous question.
Next question comes from Dr. Linda Winter. And Dr. Winter asks, do you feel that you have full integration at 4 to 6 weeks of healing? And talk about the failure rates at 8 to 12 weeks when the restorative components were in place for a couple of weeks.
Yeah, there was a study done 2 years ago by a group of prosthodontists, and they did a study on what's called early loading. Any loading before 90 days, and most agree that nowadays 90 days is when it's osseo-integrated. So they did a study on early loading, and they started loading everything at 30 days. Here's what they found. So right when you place the implant, you have an initial mechanical retention. That's basically just it being screwed into the bone. Many call that primary stability. But if you'll imagine what is around that implant, when you place that implant, it's in the bone, but really you've got this blood matrix right around the implant. So you've got bone, a blood matrix that's right against the implant, and the implant. So if you can imagine a tooth that you took out and the socket was healing, the first thing that forms in the socket is the blood, which converts to a blood clot. The next phase, 2 weeks later, is you have a good collagen matrix. 4 weeks later, you have a pretty tough collagen matrix in an extracted socket site. That same thing happens around implants. So 30 days after your implant is placed, not only do you have the mechanical retention, but you also have a very tough collagen matrix around the implant. So that's why dentists nowadays are loading at 30 days and having that same 98.6% success rate. Now, I'm a fairly conservative implant guy, so I usually wait 6 to 8 weeks, but a lot of my friends and colleagues place them at 30 days. So for anyone on the call, I still recommend 6 to 8 weeks. I just want to make sure that it's formed those collagen bonds. And the reality is it hasn't fully integrated, osseo-integrated that is, till 90 days, but you're very safe at the 30-day mark.
Next question comes from Dr. Todd Meeks. Dr. Meeks asks, if you extract, let's say, number 5, are you placing the implant in one of the root sockets, or are you drilling through septal bone? Please explain.
That's an extremely good question. If I'm placing an immediate on number 5, usually I'll take that high-speed burr, so I won't use my slow speed, and I'll zip through that. That interseptal bone, and then I'll use the OSTEOCONVERTER. It's important that you use an OSTEOCONVERTER in that case and run it down the lingual side of the socket, and then it'll push into that interseptal area. So run it down the lingual, let it push out that interseptal area, and that way you're not going to have any problems with the buccal plate. That was a fabulous question.
Next question comes from Dr. Ernie Jersinovic. Ernie asks, I've seen a mini implant system that has surgical stent to give the correct angulation. Do you have any problems with freehand approach, having the implant come out the buccal or lingual opposed to staying centered?
You know, I just went to one of the most prominent prosthodontist implant trainers internationally in Oklahoma City, and he said that pretty much all of the big implant guys that he knows have moved away from stents. A couple of reasons. Number one, a stent he finds is more like a false sense of security, kind of like the ABS brakes on a Jeep. A lot of people think that they can go fast on snowy roads and that those ABS brakes will save them. Well, that's the way a lot of dentists view a stent. Remember, the stent is made by a lab tech that's hopefully working off a CAT scan, and really you shouldn't trust the stent. The most accurate way to do this is after you numb the patient up to use your needle for anesthetic and do bone sounding. Then you know exactly where the bone is. And so I don't have a problem with ever going outside the bone because, number one, I do the 80% of cases that are easy to do that have plenty of bone for the general practitioner. And number two, I always check the buccal and lingual bone. So I'm not a big fan of stents. The other reason I don't like stents is they really, it reduces the irrigation because you've got a stent between your burr and the irrigation. Even with internal, you don't get as much. And then number two, they cost a lot. And you've got to pass that cost on to the patient. So I'm able to help my patients a lot more fee-wise without a stent. But I do have a lot of friends who love stents, and so anyone that uses stents, I have nothing against you on the call. I just don't use them. And the top 8 practices that I've worked with around the U.S. that are GP practices placing implants, they just do not use stents. They found freehand is much safer, much more accurate, and they can really assimilate where the final crown's going to be. But nothing, I have no problem with folks that do use stents. Great question.
Dr. David Stahl asks, so there are many occasions when I extract a tooth, especially in the anterior, and have a large or small fenestration, or on occasion, no buccal plate. How do you handle this?
So what I do is I extract that, and as long as the buccal plate is holding the socket out, which it usually is if it's just a fenestration, is I will just let it heal like normal for 2 to 3 months with a flipper. If they have a bad tooth like that in front, chances are they've had a lot of crown and bridge work in front with with endo and stuff. So if there's some bone loss on an anterior tooth, usually I'm doing crown and bridge work. I'm not doing implants. Remember, the most technique-sensitive things we can do in dentistry are anterior implants. If you can do crown and bridge in front, I would do it. So if they do have fenestrations, that usually means they've had a bunch of other crown and bridge in front and some endo. So I'm usually letting it heal and doing the implant 2 or 3 months later, or my preference, doing bridge work. Good question.
We have just about run out of clock, so I'm going to take one more question here. And we have, from what I'm seeing typing in here, we need to have you back again. Would you come back again?
Absolutely. This is what I live for. I love implants, and I love to do all that stuff. So absolutely.
Awesome. Then we will have you back. There's also a lot of people who are just giving kudos. Dr. Tom Armstrong says, great webinar. How can we get the ads? Okay, you're going to give me the ad. I'll get them to everybody. A bunch of people just saying really nice things. One guy says, where is Oregon? Okay. Let me, actually, I went out.
And by the way, it looks like one of the dates is totally full, and so evidently people must be calling Kelly or whatever. Maybe it was the Dental Town ad or something. So the dates that, if any of you are on that page and go to nodrillimplant.com, that actually redirects to Doc's Education, who's taking the registrations for us tonight because their online stuff can handle a bigger load. So if you go on there, one of them might be sold out. So for those of you that have not registered yet for the course, if you do pick a date and it is sold out, what we're going to do is we are going to pay for your flight out here as a thank you for not having that first pick of the courses. So if you do try to register tonight and the course, one of the courses is totally full or sold out, then what we'll do is we're going to credit up to an additional $500 off the course for you, just for the inconvenience of Kelly or one of the gals calling you back and saying, I'm sorry, that course was full. So anyway, we'll do that, so it would take the tuition down effectively like to $3,300 for those of you that do hit that problem. And so hopefully you pick one of the dates that's still open. And so, yeah.
Okay, last question of the evening, Dr. Margie Pippin. Dr. Pippin asks, if you can use osteoconverters for implants, then when or why would you use conventional implants?
That's a great question. So I have 5 lines of implants. There's the Rapid, the Prestige, the Classic, and the Efficiency Plus. Each implant could actually be used in any situation, but each implant is more suited for certain things. Like you can drive a big old Chevy 3500 on the highway. You can also drive a Corvette on the highway. The Corvette is going to go a little faster, be a little smoother. The truck, you could probably run over the Corvette, but they can both get you from point A to B. Pretty much all the implants on the market can get you to point A, from point A to B. The osteoconverter, which is actually the Prestige implant by OsteoCore, you could use that for everything. It happens to be the best implant for immediate socket sites. The reason is it's tapered just like the natural root of a tooth. And so that's why it lends itself so nicely to immediate placements and the no-drill implant procedure. It's called a root form implant. And so that is a fabulous question. And so basically each implant is a little better at a certain thing, but at the end of the day, any of them will still get you from point A to B.
This has been truly eye-opening. As I said, I kind of have a little glimmer, a twinkle in my eye, because it's very rare after these 9 years out that you know, there's much that I say, oh, I wish I could do this tomorrow, but I can't. I would love to do this tomorrow. Of course, I would also be equally excited to do the marketing on this, because I can totally see what you were saying, that here you've got an aging population. You know, if you look at the people from, let's say, 60 to 80 who are healthy and ambulatory and not really being reached as far as here's what we can do for you. And, you know, so it's definitely someplace I would be going. I'm going to say we have another date. I don't know when it'll be. We'll figure it out offline, but we'll definitely have another date at some point in 2013. Thank you so much for sharing. It's just been amazing.
Yeah, well, I want to make one point on the marketing. I bet if you took all my marketing and you put your Orient touch on it, I'd probably get 2 to 3 times more patients. So maybe we could work something
Brady,
out where you could.
Here's the funny part of that. I'm sitting here thinking to myself during the whole presentation, looking at the ads, saying, those are pretty good, but if you, and I'm saying, if you just change the headline, if you just, I was already doing that. So yeah, we'll work it out, and as a benefit, you can give it to anybody who takes your courses. But I'll definitely work on your ads with you. For everybody who's been on tonight, thank you so much for being with us. Very widespread audience tonight, so this is great to have you all. Be happy, be healthy, and prosper, and take care. Good night, guys.
Night.
Take care. Bye-bye.